Ever had one of those budget-friendly inverters just die on you right when you needed it the most? Well, today, we're not just going to talk about it. We are going to crack one open and go deep inside to figure out exactly why they fail. Okay, let's get into it. So, there you are, staring at your dead inverter. Your first thought might be, ugh, just bad luck. But what if I told you it wasn't luck at all? What if it was almost predictable? The failure of that inverter wasn't some random accident. It was a chain reaction, and it was set in motion way before you ever even turned it on. All right, let's treat this like a proper investigation. First things first, we need to examine the crime scene. What are the telltale signs we see right after an inverter gives up? For most people, the story ends right here. You might see a little puff of smoke, maybe a breaker trips, or you find a blown fuse. And what's the usual explanation? You get what you pay for. It was just a cheap one. And yeah, that's part of it, but it doesn't tell us the real story. These are just the symptoms, not the actual disease. To really understand what happened, we've got to put on our detective hats. We need to look past the smoke and the tripped breakers and go inside, right down to the circuit board itself. Because the real story, the one that can save you a headache next time, is happening at the component level. Okay, welcome to the guts of our failed inverter. In any good mystery, you have to line up the suspects. And in our case, the suspects are the very components that are supposed to be wrangling all that electrical power. Suspect number one, the MOSFETs. Think of these as tiny, incredibly fast switches, doing all the heavy lifting of turning your DC battery power into AC house power. Now, this slide says it all. A quality inverter uses big, beefy MOSFETs with these huge heat sinks designed to pull heat away. The cheap one? It uses undersized components with these dinky little heat sinks that are, frankly, a joke. They just weren't built for the job. Next in the lineup, the capacitors. Their whole job is to keep the power flow nice and smooth. As you can see, the good ones are rated for high temperatures. The cheap ones, though, they can't handle the stress. Under heat, they literally start to bulge and then they burst. It's a classic sign you see when an inverter has been pushed way past its limits. And our final suspect is the very foundation it's all built on, the printed circuit board, the PCB. See those little copper lines? Those are like highways for electricity. In a well-built unit, they're thick and wide, ready to handle a ton of traffic, a high current. But in a cheap one, they're paper thin. When you push a lot of current through them, they can overheat, scorch the board, and even burn right through. This isn't just cutting corners, it's creating a serious fire risk. So we've met our lineup of weak links. But how do they actually work together to bring down the whole system? See, it's rarely one single component failing. It's a cascade, a devastating chain reaction. The main villain in this whole story has a name: thermal runaway. The best way to think about it is like a snowball of heat rolling downhill. It starts small, but it gets bigger and faster and bigger and faster until it's an unstoppable avalanche. Once this process starts inside an electronic component, it almost always ends in total destruction. And here's exactly how that avalanche happens. It all starts when you plug in a heavy load, like a microwave or a power tool. That pulls a massive amount of DC current from your batteries. Those undersized MOSFETs just can't take it, and they start to get hot, fast. Their tiny heat sinks are completely overwhelmed. And boom, that's when thermal runaway begins. The temperature skyrockets, cooking the nearby capacitors and scorching those thin PCB chases. Game over. A complete, irreversible meltdown. Okay, I know that was all pretty grim, but here's the good news. This whole scenario is almost entirely preventable. You don't have to be a victim of a cheap inverter meltdown. You just need the right knowledge and a few key tools. And the most powerful tool in your entire toolkit isn't a fancy wrench or screwdriver. It's a little bit of basic math. Now don't worry, this isn't high-level calculus. These are simple, back-of-the-napkin calculations that empower you to understand exactly what's happening inside your system. So, the absolute first number you need to wrap your head around is DC current draw. Simply put, this is how much juice your inverter is pulling from the batteries. And you need to know it because this is the single biggest stressor on everything inside that inverter. The higher this number gets, the more heat and pressure you're putting on those cheap components, pushing them closer and closer to the edge. And here's how you figure it out. It's really simple. You just take the power of whatever you're running in watts and divide it by your battery voltage times the inverter's efficiency. For most cheaper models, you can just assume that efficiency is around 85% or 0.85. Let's make this real.
Imagine you're running a 1200-watt microwave on a standard 12-volt battery system with one of these cheap inverters. You run the numbers, and what do you get? A whopping 117.6 amps. That is a massive amount of current to be pulling, and it's exactly the kind of load that kicks off that deadly thermal runaway we were just talking about. Now, once you know your maximum current, you can properly protect your system. Remember, the fuse isn't just there to protect your inverter. It's there to prevent a fire. Using the right one is absolutely non-negotiable.
And the rule of thumb for this is super simple, but it's incredibly effective. You take your maximum expected DC current, multiply it by 1.25, and that gives you the right fuse size. That fuse will handle the normal load just fine, but it'll blow safely before the current gets high enough to cause damage or a fire.
And beyond the math, some basic best practices will be your best friend. First, give your inverter room to breathe. Good ventilation is absolutely critical for managing heat. Always is the correct fuse, and make sure your system is grounded properly. Use thick, heavy-gauge cables to reduce voltage drop, which just adds more stress. And finally, respect the ratings on the box. They're limits, not suggestions.
So, after all of that, what's the big takeaway? How do we make sure our systems are robust and reliable, not ticking time bombs?
It really all comes down to this one simple idea. There's no dark magic, there's no mystery. Cheap inverters fail for one reason and one reason only. Their guts are being subjected to way more electrical and thermal stress than they were ever designed to handle. That's it. A quality inverter is engineered to manage that stress. A cheap one is engineered to a price point. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question to think about. Go take a hard look at your own setup. Now that you've seen what happens on the inside, can you say with confidence that your system is actually designed for safety? Or is it unknowingly destined to fail? The choice and the math is now in your hands.